This segment is brought to you in part by the Canadian Historical Arms Society, owners of the Genesee Range, the premier recreational sport and training facility in Western Canada. See us online at historical-arms.com.
The Quiet Professional, a podcast about law enforcement, security, justice, and politics. We are digging deeper on the issues and going where the information takes us with access to experts and authorities. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back. Nathan Romas with you. Today we are going to be talking about foreign interference and some misinformation, disinformation pieces, more from a municipal police level. So a little bit closer to home than a previous podcast I had back at the beginning of April with Marcus Kolga. So that was very much big picture, geopolitics, that type of stuff. So I think this will be a good tie-in to kind of bring it a little bit more to ground level for people. For that, I have Detective Sergeant John Khoshandish here. He is the unit commander for the York Regional Police Tactical Intelligence Unit, where John leads the intelligence development on organized crime and supports national security, counter-terrorism, and foreign interference investigations. He's advised the House of Commons Standing Committee on Public Safety and National Security and contributed to national police training standards through the Canadian Association of Chiefs of Police Subcommittee on Foreign Interference. That is a super long name. John holds a Master's of International Affairs and Cybersecurity from King's College London and a Justice Studies degree from the University of Guelph. So welcome, John.
Thank you for having me, Nathan. Appreciate it.
I'm excited to get you on here. As I said in your intro, Marcus Kolga kind of put us in touch. So obviously you and him kind of work in some similar spheres and stuff. But one of the things I wanted to start with was asking you, how did you get into this world of the whole misinfo, disinfo, and foreign interference? Because from a municipal policing level, I've yet to hear of anybody else doing this. So if you do know of someone, feel free to give them credit. But I've yet to hear of anyone. So how did you get into this?
Yeah, great question. First of all, thanks for having me and giving me an opportunity to talk about this important topic. So my portfolio here involves organized crime. I have two teams that are responsible for producing tactical, operational, strategic intelligence products on organized crime, and that's mainly involves tier one organized crime, where intelligence probing is required to advance some investigations forward to enforcement, preferably. And I have one team that is called the Protective Services section, and this section specifically is put together to investigate regional national security type investigations in support of our federal partners. They also look after things like witness protection, VIP dignitary protection for Prime Minister of Canada when they are here in the region. But as you may know, in the past 4 or 5 years, there has been an increase in instances of radicalization, violent extremism, and foreign interference that have come on our radar here at York Regional Police. Some of your listeners might also be familiar with the Greater Toronto Area and how diverse it is. York Region has got a population now approaching 1.3 million people, and with huge diasporas from the Chinese and the Iranian community in particular. Mm-hmm. And those communities obviously have been dealing in some forms of transnational repression and foreign interference with different severity over the past few years. So that basically, compelled me to, first of all, educate myself to learn more about the mechanisms of how foreign interference touches our communities, to understand more about the geopolitics behind it. That also motivated me to get my master's degree in international affairs and cybersecurity, as you mentioned, in King's College London, which has a excellent program. And through that program, I had the privilege of meeting and communicating with my colleagues in, for example, the German intelligence, the BKA, the European Commission, uh, different teams in Europe that are working on similar types of investigations. So that allowed me to get better perspective on this issue, and with the help of my team, with the security section here, develop a local framework to address this issue.
Okay. Well, I guess maybe on that too is so you're talking like you're interacting with international partners. I think when most people think of misinfo, disinfo, they maybe believe that, or foreign interference, even uh, that is an RCMP job. That's a national police scale of things, and you're running this at the municipal service level. Are there any other ones in Canada that you know of? Like, does anyone else have their finger on the pulse of this locally? And with that being said, you know, is this something that you think that municipal services could take on? Like maybe the bigger ones, so major cities? I know not like small towns, they're not going to have an intel unit that's going to work this stuff, but maybe it's something that others should be looking at.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so the RCMP, you're absolutely correct that is their primary mandate, and we work very very closely with them on this issue as well as CSIS, of course. Um, the issue is that and 2024 NCCOP report as well as the Hague Commission report that was released this year pointed to the fact that the threshold for engagement is different for different agencies on this particular issue and foreign interference, and um, there hasn't been the consistency that's needed to address these issues, and there's been a lack of clarity in some cases with the victims of particularly transnational repression on who to go to when something like this happens. For example, we speak to the victims or the complainants of this issue, and oftentimes they tell us that we don't know whether we should go to CSIS, RCMP, or the local police, and sometimes those agencies refer us to the other.
Yeah.
And so that kind of it kind of leaves them a little bit confused. And then there's a lot of reasons for this, obviously, from the RCMP's perspective, or Integrated National Security Enforcement Team perspective, because they are focused on criminality, and they are focused on whether there is a criminal offense taking place at a national security level, which isn't often the case for foreign interference, and that's really, for the most part, by design. FI operations don't typically leave with obvious criminality, which and if it does, it's something like harassment or simple assault, which then could put the ball back in the local police agency's court. This is where I identified this. I refer to it as a gap because I think it is that this transition back and forth between local and federal sometimes creates confusion and sort of lack of confidence by some of the community, which we've heard in the Hague Commission particularly.
Hmm. You know what? I think you kind of nailed it there too when you talk about the clarity, and then there's a consistency piece in there. Even when it comes to criminal files, you can see the bouncing back and forth between, we'll say, RCMP and municipal service. Like, well, it was on that side of the line, but the person lives here, but this is over there. And then they just like, okay, somebody just do something about it, right? I think what a lot of people, they kind of lose hope. The diaspora, the victims of some of this stuff, they lose hope because when you go to the police, generally, we act under the criminal code, and otherwise it becomes an intelligence gathering exercise. And it's like, well, then what do we do with that? One of the things I wanted to ask about was the education piece. So you say when the diaspora come to you and they say, hey, this is happening, I'm being harassed, or I think a lot of these people who are involved in this world, They know how to play in the gray area. They know where the line is and they'll push it to it. So it's not criminal just yet. But what do you educate the diaspora on? How do you talk to them about this and how to protect themselves or where to go?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. A lot of this happens in the gray zone, and that again, that's by design. And what we do here is, one of the things I've noted with this type of, especially transnational repression type activities, is that this is a lot about psychological pressure and psychological warfare. It operates, in subtle ways, and and it's intended that way. And I think one of the most important things for local agencies to keep in mind is that the victims of transnational repression just simply need to be understood and have an ally in the community who understands the issue and are attentive to the risk that they feel that they're under. So I can get into the YRP framework and what we put into place, but that's one of the key things is to make sure that we have the right people responding to these calls. And so, I can, if you want, I can get into the framework, or if you want to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, no, feel free. I think a lot of this stuff people really don't understand. It's so it kind of gets portrayed as like almost like a boogeyman, and it's like it's there, but nobody ever gives a concrete example of what it is or how it's dealt with. And you're like, well, we need something tangible almost. It's real for the community that's experiencing it, but when it comes to the police side of things, like you could send a patrol officer to one of these calls.
Yeah.
They're never going to connect it to anything foreign, right?
Yeah, maybe it's. Again, one of the issues that I think NCCOP and Hogue Commission's reports released is the definition really of foreign interference. Like, is there a common definition, and is there a common threshold for engagement for investigation? And those things we both need to we need to both work on both. Excuse me, on those two issues. And this is where the national framework is needed to sort of standardize that. But just maybe it would be helpful if I could give a little bit of overview of what foreign interference is, and then we can transition into the framework we developed here. So obviously, foreign interference isn't anything new, right? It's just relatively new to Canada's public discourse. But when we talk about foreign interference today, it can sound like a modern threat, but in reality is that this is definitely nothing new. Foreign interference has long been part of international relations from, regime changes, particularly after World War II, in places like the Middle East and primarily in the global South, really, and that involved anything from complete regime changes to economic sabotage and espionage. And powerful states have always sought to shape outcomes in other nations, sometimes overtly, often through cover of intelligence operations. But these FI operations have had profound impact on these countries, as we're beginning to see in Canada as well. Which is incredible if you really think about it, that FI, if significant enough, can alter the political system, political discourse, and even culture of a country if it's significant enough. And generally speaking, foreign interference fits relatively well within the tradition of realist international relations theory, which says that states act primarily in their own interest, using whatever tools they have to maximize power and security, even if it means manipulating events beyond their borders.
Yeah.
So while the language around foreign interference might feel new in Canada, the practice itself is as old as diplomacy. And what was changed is the Canada that is now more a prominent target, and public awareness is finally catching up to what intelligence communities have long known. And these countries typically follow a cost-benefit formula.
Yep.
particularly for nations who are powerful enough to absorb some sort of form of blowback, right, to these operations. And we see it in the manner how China, Russia, India specifically have acted against Canada in recent years. So, the question that might pop up for Canadians might be, well, what exactly is foreign interference and why should I care about it? Certainly, it's a deliberate, often covert campaign by states or their proxies, or what CSIS calls the co-optees, which they actually are. This is actually a big challenge for us. Is the co-optee categories where the individual has no formal ties or links with the regime or foreign entity, but they operate in their interests regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very difficult to investigate somebody like that because again, the thresholds for investigations are quite high still in terms of the federal engagement. Is that they want to see some sort of foreign nexus before they come in, and so. And that makes it difficult. So
those high thresholds, is that because on the criminal side, there's like a high threshold for any type of charges that might even be related to it, even though I don't think we really have a whole lot that is in that realm. But is it stemming from that, or is it just legislation in general? We're missing the right legislation to really consider going after this stuff seriously.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's a multi-pronged answer to this. From what I've seen, this is again my perspective from what I see. There are obviously resource constraints. There are the national security architecture and the framework can definitely improve in the way it works together seamlessly between CSIS, RCMP, and the local agencies. There has been some strides made in the past few years to improve that, but again, we hear it from the commissions that further improvements are needed. The previous government did introduce Bill C-70 to enhance some of these charges that are available to us, but so they did actually, for example, they revised the Foreign Interference and Security Information Act, otherwise known as FISI. This was updated in 2024, and it did introduce available charges that includes intimidation, threats, or violence in Canada or outside of Canada. So, if you use threats or violence inside Canada to try to influence someone on behalf of a foreign state, for example, you're now breaking the law. Threatening someone's family abroad, say in another country, to silence or pressure someone in Canada, that's now an offense as well. So now those are available. The only issue is that they can only be pursued by the RCMP with the Attorney General consent. It's not available to the local agencies.
Okay. And you wanted to talk about the structure that you have set up as well?
Yeah. So one of the issues that we wanted to address here is how we identify these cases from the front line. This is one of the challenges with the lack of training and awareness, is that these are complicated topics, and we really haven't had training in this area. Mm-hmm. So we ran a seminar back in December 2024. We're running our second seminar in actually next week. And we're going to be discussing this framework with our officers. And so the flagging system is the first protocol that we put into place. And basically what it means is that when officers attend a call, and if they receive any information that suggests that there's a foreign state or foreign entity related activity, that they would flag the call appropriately.
Okay.
And so there are two different classifications of categorization for the call. One is that we want to know what is the the sort of nature of the call, whether it's a allegation of harassment or threats or intimidation, or it could be non-criminal. We want to know about that too. So it's basically a drop-down menu. They select what fits the call more appropriately, and also what the victim type is, whether they're dissidents, journalists, and we have different categories for this. And what happens is the call gets routed, or the report gets routed to our intelligence unit here, and our security section reviews every single case to verify the information, and triage it and respond to it appropriately. If, for example, we identify that we need a follow-up interview with this individual, we will follow up with that. The advantage here is that the intelligence unit here obviously is more aware and in tune with these issues. So when they do meet with the complainant, they instill much more confidence in the victim reporting these incidents, which I believe is a major part of what a robust framework in this area should bring.
Yeah.
And this is where, we prioritize the case. We immediately do a deconfliction with our federal partners to ensure that whether they are interested in engaging in that file at that time, which then, of course, we defer to them. If they feel that the threshold is not met, or they don't feel like they want to get engaged at that time, then we will continue with our own investigative steps.
Okay.
And there are a lot of investigative steps that are available to us that we undertake.
One of the things that makes me remember is there's a call I went to. It was a fraud complaint. I believe it came as a fraud complaint initially, but I am talking with this guy. He's from China. He's here as a student, and he said he just got a random phone call, and it was someone sounded like they were from back home, so speaking with an accent and everything. And they basically claim they're from the government. They say, you have to send us, I want to say it was $10,000. They go, you have to send us $10,000 or we're going to, they're going to mess with his visa, his student visa, or his actual passport. So he sent the money. And then he's like, obviously I didn't hear anything after, so I just wanted to report it. And that was right when I was kind of just learning about some of this stuff. And one, it's we didn't have anywhere to send that to, here in Edmonton, or didn't know of any other resources, even federally, that we would send that kind of stuff to. But it just kind of got me thinking. I'm like, wow, some of these governments in other places really would do that kind of stuff. So they're people that go around the world that are, studying or working abroad. They would really believe that the government is calling them. If CRA called me and I was in another country, it would be like, bullshit. I'm not sending you anything.
Yeah.
But that's the relationship we have with our government here. Whereas I think much of the world, their government would actually just call them and say, send me money now, or I'm going to, you're not coming home, or I'm going to send people to come and bring you home, or whatever it might be. So it is pretty scary for some of them. I think the other thing that people really don't realize is that a lot of these countries, they play long ball. They really do believe, even though you've lived abroad for 20, 30 or more years, you still belong to us. You still come back to the mothership when it's all said and done. So they will reach out and touch people and, get money or ask for favors or some sort of influence all those years later. And I think that's really hard for the Western mind to grasp. So when you see it on the front lines for officers, it's you've never thought like that. You've never thought about it. You've never maybe even heard about it until recently. So when they show up at those calls, they wouldn't even think to connect that to foreign interference. So yeah, it's definitely going to be an uphill battle educating that many people, I think. But I bless you for trying to do all this work. Do you find is this buy-in from the chief level? Do you find that the higher ups really understand this problem, or are you kind of educating in both directions?
Yeah, I think we've been fortunate here at York that our senior command is very much in tune. I mean, they're responsible for policing a very much of a global community, and so they're very much in touch with this issue, and they've allowed myself and my team to put this framework in place and been supportive in our continued efforts in running seminars and training our officers. And uh, my deputy chief Al Almeida asked me to be on the Canadian Chiefs of Police Subcommittee for Foreign Interference for trying to develop a framework for local agencies across the country.
Okay.
Um, we basically used some of these examples from the cases that we've had to sort of build that framework. I mean, there's a lot of just basic, good old fashioned policing that steps that can be taken to basically uncover more information to be able to better diagnose these issues. I often use this analogy of going to your doctor and for example, you have some clinical symptoms, some physical symptoms of an issue that you might be experiencing, and your doctor is not sure about whether this dull ache in your lower back is going to kill you or not. And what they ask generally in those circumstances is blood work, CT scan, MRI. They ask that to gain more intelligence and more information to be able to better diagnose the issue, right? And that's basically what the role of intelligence is in law enforcement, is to be able to see better through this MRI, for example, and to be able to identify whether this issue is how significant it is, and whether you should put more resources behind it or not. And a lot of, unfortunately, there isn't enough intelligence work in the area at a local level to be able to see better. And if the federal threshold is high, then that leaves a gap.
Yeah.
And this is where we're trying to fill this gap is to we've done everything from never underestimate the value of a door knock, or interviewing witnesses or somebody who might be actually perpetrating these things against the community. It does make an impact. We've done surveillance, we've done human source development, confidential informants in this area. We've done technical security sweeps of victims who've reported foreign interference to us. Basically, we've swept their homes and their cars for tracking devices and for listening devices. It gives them a reassurance that we've taken it seriously. I mean, we don't do this for everybody, but if we feel that scenario or situation is significant enough, that we can do those things. And not only that, it also gets around the community that the police are actually taking this very seriously, and that does have an impact, I've noted.
As the education part of that grows, though, and you're talking about, there's that gap between the RCMP and then the municipal service. So if you're kind of moving up to fill that, do you foresee that as you educate more and more officers and services on this, they're going to be coming to you guys to kind of help them out, especially smaller services? I imagine that if they start running into things come election time or wherever it might be, they're going to need some help with this.
Yeah. So this seminar that we're doing next week, for example, we've invited other GTA forces as well as federal services to join us. And what's unique about this particular seminar is that I've invited victims of FI. So
okay.
Marcus Koga, Marcus will be there talking about his experiences from Russian TNR. Dr. Hamid Ismailian, who it's a very tragic story that I can tell you about, but he was the chair of the PS 752 victims' families of the Ukrainian airliner that was shot down in Iran by the IRGC. because of his political activities, he was subject of transnational repression. It was a very tragic story. So he will be there. I wanted him to be there to really make the officers really understand the gravity of how this impacts people at a very personal level.
Yeah.
And we have another journalist from Iran International who covered the kidnapping plot in New York City, again backed by Iran. She covered that in person. She was present in court, so she will be talking about that case. And we have another journalist from Markham who has a lot of experience in transnational repression perpetrated by China, so she will be there as well. So, yeah, to answer your question, we're trying to share this with other agencies as much as we can, so maybe we can hopefully be helpful.
For the foreign influence, foreign interference component, some misinfo, disinfo goes into that. Do you end up investigating any of that level of stuff? Like, do you look to kind of, I don't know if I'd say debunk, but do you look to set certain records straight at all? Or are you, again, kind of going back to what we were saying at the beginning, like you're looking for a criminal component to something in the end? Where do you fit in that whole kind of spectrum of things?
Yeah, I mean, that's a little bit outside the scope of what we do. We are focused on anything that would promote violent activity, right? So
Okay.
that's really my concern. And there's been a huge explosion of that, extremism, ideologically motivated violent extremism in Canada, and that's one of the issues that makes the national security picture so precarious, for lack of a better term, is that now it's coming from every direction, and basically we've covered every form of radical violent extremism that you can think of in our work here.
Yeah.
And so and that's very concerning. But I will say that there has been foreign interference related spread of disinformation, misinformation quite heavily, and I think you're aware of this, and different national security services have basically said as much, and it's really impacted our opinion formation on basically everything that's vital to our daily lives. From our health to our security and to our political opinions. And as you know, it has really divided the country, and it will continue to go that direction unless we sort of become unified on this issue and put partisanship aside, because that's exactly what our adversaries are exploiting, is that they're heavily exploiting the partisanship in the public discourse. And as you can sense, I'm sure, that political parties almost regard each other as the enemy of the state, and that doesn't
Well, they say as much. Yeah, those are pretty much their words. So,
and that's very, very concerning. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really what the adversary is looking to exploit. We do need to put public security and national interest ahead of everything else, and I'm hoping to see that moving forward.
I feel like the foreign influence has an intended goal. Like they want to see an election go a certain way, or they want to influence something in a business, right? Like maybe a business deal. But when it comes to like the whole misinfo, disinfo, it's kind of like they're tools to use and steer people. But a lot of the time, I think the misinfo, disinfo is literally just to get people on their heels and get them off kilter, and they don't know which way is up, which way is down, what to believe.
Yeah.
And once they kind of just sow that chaos and instill doubt in the population, that's kind of what they're trying to do for the most part, is just get people riled up and untrusting of, institutions, their neighbors, whatever it might be. And then in that chaos, everybody's kind of distracted, and then they can go out and focus on whatever they need to focus on. I feel like that's kind of the world we're operating in with a lot of this. I don't know if that sounds correct.
Yeah, I mean, we're inundated with information, right? And no one is immune to this, and including police officers or even myself, right? I mean, I always say that our implicit biases are it's a significant factor in these things. The confirmation bias and the way we examine information. We have a belief system, and we usually look for information that confirms that belief system, and that doesn't help in sort of sifting through this kind of material. So I think with the advent of social media, as you know, and podcasts and everything else, I mean, to a large part has displaced some traditional media, and there's had some positive and some negative aspects of this, right? So. But what I always tell the people and in our seminars is that there are very rigorous journalists and outlets that are out there that are producing very good information. There are outlets like Reuters and Associated Press who've lost journalists in the field. And who have had a excellent track record on reporting facts and analysis. And I think one of the big issues with social media information is that if you don't have the basic facts right, at least, then the analysis that comes layers on top of that is then very much flawed.
Yeah.
So you can't skip that step. Right. If you don't have the basic facts, then whatever analysis that you have of those pieces of information is it's going to be flawed. So, and people literally don't know what's true or false anymore. And what I can say is that, I mean, being a police officer yourself, that to build a case, it takes a lot, right? It takes a lot of expense. It takes a lot of surveillance, a lot of effort, a lot of search warrants, a lot of investigation to build a case that we can take to court. That's expensive. Telling a lie or half truth is simple. You just put it out there, and and then you just you push it, and and a lot of the outside information from the outside of the country that's coming to Canada is being recirculated by Canadians themselves.
Yeah,
because they believe it to be true, and then they just circulate it around, and no one's reading, Foreign Affairs magazine or Foreign Policy magazine or The Economist magazine or going to Reuters or Associated Press. These institutions that have, some of them are over 100 years old, and they have their entire platform is based on integrity of factual reporting, and correcting themselves when they do make a mistake. And because they have a reputational risk on that they have to worry about, but also lawsuits, for example, they can't just publish anything that just comes out of nowhere, right? They have to be able to substantiate it, fact check.
Yeah, there's a level of accountability.
There's a journalistic integrity, exactly, and they don't just give a platform just to anybody just so they can hear a different voice, right? Platforming, this is the thing about the social media and podcasts or different forums online, is that anybody can be given a platform. And although, there's a lot of value in, different sources of information, it's only as good as the sort of critical examination of that information by the viewer or the listener. Mm-hmm. So, somebody might bring some value here, but then they might go totally off to something that is, untrue or extreme, and get the listener to, buy into that narrative. So, critical thinking, critical examination of facts, really important. And I thought that, the level of intelligence or education might guard against this, but I'm not so sure anymore. I mean, I have to watch out myself to make sure that I'm not under that influence. That oftentimes it takes me, an hour and a half to try to fact check something
Yeah.
that I heard through multiple sources, and to see, okay, well, what is the probability of this being correct?
I'm glad I'm not the only one. Sometimes I'll read something and it's like a paragraph, and then I spend an hour on a paragraph, and I'm like, "Where's this? I got to look more into this," and then my whole day's gone, and like you go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, you go down a rabbit hole. I mean, I took a course at CSIS called the Advanced Analytic Tradecraft. This was a few years ago, and in that course, they really talked about um, the narrative and the spin, and
Mm,
when you read something, and the whole intention behind it was, to make sure that when you're authoring intelligence products, that you yourself are not doing that. What you want to do is present a very balanced, dispassionate account of what you're trying to convey to the reader. And so, therefore, we examined a lot of, for example, media articles that clearly was intended to draw some sort of emotional response from the viewer or the reader. And appealing to emotion is far different than appealing to logic.
yeah, oh yeah.
And appealing to emotion is a lot easier. It's a much easier pathway. And in our brains, I mean, the way our brains work is quite complex. And the more I try to learn about that, how this process works in terms of heuristics and these mental shortcuts that we all make in our minds when we're presented with information that appeals to our emotion,
Yeah.
whether that's fear or disgust or whatever it is, and we have this visceral reaction to it. And a lot of people have gotten rich off this. A lot of podcasters and social media outlets that can really play with your emotions have done really well.
I find it funny that, as a human being, you think it would be kind of counter to what would be healthy for you and what you would want to feel in a day. Like, I don't want to be constantly angry, but that's what everybody seeks out, right? They want the drama on Instagram or wherever they're looking. And it's like, that doesn't seem like a good way to be day in and day out, always kind of engulfed in that type of stuff. So, but apparently it's what feeds the beast, and you get more of it. And yeah, no, I like what you're saying there, and I think a lot of people miss that critical thinking piece, because even within law enforcement, I mean,
Mhm. Yeah.
obviously I've had many discussions with coworkers about politics and different things going on, and just sometimes you hear them, they'll literally word for word just repeat something almost reflexively, that they just say like a headline that they read or a line that you heard as well on social media. It's like, do you actually believe that? Like, what, did you look into that? You think you would know better based on all your experience, or I know where you work, like you should know better than that. So it is surprising. It affects everybody, and you can
Mhm.
be
Yes.
you can be a victim of it, but you can also be the one perpetrating or spreading it, I guess would be the best word. One of the things I wanted to ask about here, just as we're kind of coming near the end of our time, was where are you seeing a lot of this foreign influence occur? Like, if you have like certain subsets of victims that come to you, is it more in one community? And then on that, is it more in one type of one job type or an industry? Like, is it always politics, or is it in business? Um, and then specifically, is it like, because we mentioned China and Iran, I'm guessing those are the two biggest influencers right now that are out there.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in our region, yes, but there's other countries. Obviously, we've heard about India now. The government's been pretty clear about that. We've heard now about Pakistan. I mean, these are the countries that the government has discussed openly, but there are others as well. But yeah, we've had, for example, a kidnapping plot that was linked to a U.S. investigation in York region with the use of private investigators for surveillance. That was related to Iran. As I mentioned, the PS 752
Mhm.
issue with transnational repression. We've had the expansion of Iran's sort of cultural footprint through various public efforts. There are pro-regime elements here that they're very careful, but they do. I'll give you an example. There was a protest where Iranian protesters were protesting against the Iranian regime, and there was some people that were recording them and making comments like, we'll see if your mother or your family likes to see this back home, right? And
Okay.
there's a lot to be said about that kind of comment, because we know that the Iranian regime does target the families, and they do interrogate them and threaten them back home. So, and so that's for Iran. For China, we've had Operation Fox Hunt. I'm not sure you're familiar with that. Basically, is a Chinese state initiative that launched in 2014 under the guise of anti-corruption campaign, and the practice has been sort of used to target the coarse Chinese nationals abroad, dissidents, whistleblowers, or political rivals through surveillance threats and intimidation. So we had somebody that was allegedly wanted by the Chinese government. We had this person who was a Markham resident. His picture was published in a Chinese media outlet and disseminated through the street that he was living on. So every house on the street that he lived on got these papers. And we have, we found surveillance footage of, we weren't able to identify these individuals, but as they were putting the paper, somebody was actually videotaping the act of disseminating these papers. So, we had that situation, and we had another situation that it's been reported in the media, so I can talk about it now. The case has been concluded, but there was a case involving theft of intellectual property and trade secrets of a company in Markham called Hybar Systems. They're advanced battery manufacturing company. They were so successful as a Canadian company that Tesla acquired them.
Okay.
And shortly after that acquisition, one of the employees leaves the company and goes to China and steals the intellectual property and takes it with him. And he proceeds to establish another company over there in China and producing the same technology. So I looked at the case back in 2020. I felt that, there could have been a chance that this was linked to the China's 1,000 Talent Plan, which again was it's a kind of recruitment program aimed at attracting top, technical scientific talent in the world. And basically, want these guys to bring this intellectual property and this know-how back in however way that they can, whether it's stealing it or otherwise. And unfortunately, didn't meet the threshold here when I presented it to our federal partners here. But I took it to the FBI. Myself and with my colleagues here with the security section, we presented the case to the FBI in Manhattan, and they decided to take the case at that point. And that was in 2021, following a very successful undercover operation by the FBI. They managed to lure the individual back from China to the United States, and they arrested him. And he's now facing 2 years in jail in the United States. So the point of that story is that, we don't need to pursue economic espionage necessarily, which has to involve ties to direct ties to the state. If we can pursue, theft of intellectual property or fraud or theft of trade secrets, which what the FBI ended up doing, is that we make the environment less permissible and less inviting for this type of activity. And that's really the message for the law enforcement officers who are out there listening to this, that you can pursue the other legal means to make foreign interference more difficult and this type of activity less inviting.
Yeah, and you know what? I won't go on a big gripe session, but about the RCMP and the threshold stuff. I will just say though, I have seen some very good files, and this is in the gang world, so we're talking drugs and guns and that type of stuff, where we can't get buy-in at the national level, but we go to our American partners and they are Johnny on the spot, willing to help out in any way they can. And they've been very good to deal with. And that's from DEA to ATF. Like, and that just makes me think that we need a change in legislation. We need to have the laws in place, and we have examples of that. We can look to other countries. We need the laws in place to show that we're taking it seriously here, the foreign influence, foreign interference type stuff, and that we'll actually prosecute it. One of the problems we have in Canada is we don't have a lot of specialists that know this stuff. So we could change the laws and the police can go lay the charges, and then we have nobody to run it in court. So we have to have like a wholesale change right throughout the justice system that shows that we're taking it seriously. And we do need to have I honestly think we do need to have some change in, how would I put it, just the function of the RCMP. Like, they really need to be focused on that federal level because there's nobody else that can do it. And once you start kicking it back down to local police, then we start getting those gaps in service. We start missing things. We have different levels of education and understanding between the two. So yeah, we do need some more help in that realm. Whether people change mandates or create provincial police, that's all those other arguments. But there are options out there, and I think that's something really we can kind of end on here. Is there are options out there. So if you aren't getting traction here, if you can connect it to anything in the U.S., talk to your U.S. partners. Right there's a lot of different people out there that are willing to help. It's just more knowing where to go for that help. So
I agree, Nathan. I mean, you made a good point there. I think one of the challenges is the vertical integration of this philosophy throughout from the federal to the local, and it's a big challenge. But I always said, like, the foreign interference operations takes a bit of ingenuity, flair, and innovation, and it takes the same to combat it.
Yeah,
the same posture. So we can't be too narrowly sort of tied to the letter of our mandates. We're going to miss the picture. We have to be flexible. We have to pivot. We have to understand that it's the spirit of the mandate that's more important. And we have to look out for the best interest of Canada. I mean, this is I've traveled quite a bit, and this is the best country in the world, and we really got to protect it. We can't take it for granted, and we have to do everything possible to come together, unify the country. The law enforcement intelligence services got to come together and work more collaboratively and more succinctly, and with more clarity of mandate and the mission. But I also say this, that resources is an issue, and there's a lot of people around the country that are trying to do their best, whether at the RCMP or wherever else, and they're constrained by the resources and the help that they're getting. So there's that as well.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll get you out here one day and we'll set something up, one of these units out west. So we'll have to look into that.
Happy to help.
I want to say we're just at the end of time. So thank you for being on here today and educating us on this topic, because it is extremely important. We're seeing it coming up more and more. So and if we can actually get you out here and set up some kind of unit, I'll have to go talk to some people, see if that can happen. But I want to say,
we're happy to help, Nathan.
So thank you for being on the show today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Nathan, for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening in and following along with the discussions. Be sure to click the follow or subscribe button on your respective listening platform. Also, check out the Quiet Professional on X and Instagram under TQP780. And most importantly, please share where you can. Everyone has a part to play in getting these education and information pieces out there, so pass it along. Thanks again.